the late afternoon rain had just stopped in a small neighborhood of Chicago, leaving the sidewalks glittering under the yellow streetlights as if the city had been washed clean. Inside a busy supermarket on Lincoln Avenue, carts rolled over the damp floor as mothers hurried with children, older couples compared prices on canned soup, and store employees refilled shelves to prepare for the dinner rush. It was a normal weekday, a day that seemed like any other, until a small and nervous presence stepped inside through the automatic doors. Emily Parter, 7 years old, blonde hair tied in a small ponytail, and wearing a blue raincoat still dripping water, clutched a small shopping basket as if holding her entire world in her hands. Her mother, Olivia Carter, a successful businesswoman who built a retail company from scratch, had decided it was time for Emily to do her first grocery errand alone. Nothing big, just milk, bread, and a small treat. Olivia wanted her daughter to grow up independent, but she followed behind at a distance, making sure she was safe. Emily took the challenge seriously, counting and recounting the dollar bills and coins in her pocket as she walked down the aisles smelling of fresh produce, bakery pastries, and cleaning products. She wanted to be responsible. She wanted her mother to be proud. But life, especially for a child, can turn in a second. Just as she reached the dairy section, Emily tripped on a slightly raised edge of the floor. The small coins scattered across the ground, ringing like tiny bells. She tried to pick them up, her hands trembling, but 2 disappeared under a shelf. Emily bit her lip, her eyes filling with anxiety. She had the list, she had the basket, but she no longer had the exact money. Still, she continued. She was determined. At the checkout line, the supermarket was more crowded than usual. People looked tired, impatient, thinking of what to cook, whether the bus would be late, or how to stretch the week's groceries. Emily placed her items on the counter, took a deep breath, and handed the cashier her small pile of damp bills and coins. The woman counted carefully, then spoke in a soft but firm voice. "Sweetheart, you are short by $1. Emily froze. Her face turned red and her small hands shook. A man in the line sighed loudly. Another whispered something about parents not teaching their kids better. Emily looked down and whispered that she needed the items, that her mother trusted her, that she wanted to do it right. A tear ran down her cheek, and she felt the weight of disappointment on her little shoulders. Before the cashier could say anything else, a calm and warm voice came from the side. "It is all right. I will take care of it." Emily turned and saw Ethan Brooks, a young store employee wearing a green apron and holding a broom in one hand. He had gentle brown eyes and a tired but sincere smile. Ethan crouched so they were eye to eye and told her that everyone has difficult days and that helping someone never hurt the world. He opened his worn wallet and handed the missing dollar to the cashier. Emily tried to put back the chocolate bar, saying she did not want him to spend more than necessary, but Ethan shook his head lightly and told her that every growing girl deserved a small chocolate on her first shopping trip. Emily laughed through her tears and thanked him. She took her bag, waved goodbye, and left the store, skipping carefully so the groceries would not bounce. Olivia, who had watched everything from the end of the aisle, felt something inside her move. She had seen kindness before, but rarely kindness without audience, reward, or intention. Ethan did not know her, did not know the life she lived, and certainly had no idea that her family ran one of the most successful companies in the state. He simply helped because a child needed help. Olivia decided not to approach him that moment. She wanted to know more first.
She watched her daughter walk toward her proudly and hugged her tightly. As they left the supermarket and the wet air brushed their faces, Olivia looked through the window one last time. Ethan was sweeping the floor again, unaware that the smallest action of his day had just started something far bigger than he could imagine.
Ethan Brooks left the supermarket that evening with shoulders a bit heavier than usual, though he had smiled kindly at coworkers and told jokes to lighten the closing shift. The truth was that the long days were starting to wear him down. He walked through the dimly lit streets of Chicago, heading toward a small apartment in an older building where paint on the walls was fading and the elevator had been out of service for years. Ethan never complained. He climbed the stairs every night, carrying grocery bags, and told himself that life was temporary, that he just had to keep moving forward until things changed. But deep down, he was not sure when that change would come. Waiting inside was his younger sister, Sarah Brooks, 16 years old, bright eyes, and determination far bigger than their apartment. She was studying at the worn dining table, textbooks open, a glass of water at her side. When Ethan entered, she saw the tiredness on his face immediately. "You are late again," she said softly. "Did you eat?" Ethan forced a smile and ruffled her hair like he used to when she was little. "Not yet. I grabbed instant noodles from the store." Sarah crossed her arms. "You need real food, Ethan. You cannot keep living like this." But Ethan just sat down and told her that everything would be worth it when she graduated high school and went to nursing school. He believed in her more than he believed in anything in the world. Across the city, Olivia Carter sat in her sleek penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the city lights, but her mind was on something far more simple. The image of Ethan kneeling to comfort her daughter. She had spent years surrounded by people who acted nice only when they saw benefit. But Ethan had acted with sincerity, even when he thought no one was watching. Olivia wanted to know who he was, how he lived, and what life had shaped a heart like that. She called her assistant and asked discreetly for information about him. Not to intrude, not to expose, but to understand. 2 days later, Olivia and Emily returned to the same supermarket. This time, Olivia did not stay hidden. She walked beside her daughter, her heels soft on the polished floor, as Emily scanned the aisles looking for the kind young man who had saved her first grown-up mission. They found him near the apples, restocking produce with the same patient focus he gave to sweeping floors. When Emily yelled his name and ran to him, Ethan's face lit up in surprise, followed quickly by a warm smile that belonged to someone who had learned to appreciate small joys. To her mother, Emily proudly introduced him as the bravest man she had ever met. Ethan stood up, nervous but respectful, and shook Olivia's hand. She thanked him without exaggeration, without dramatics, but with sincerity that made Ethan blush. He told her it had been nothing. She told him it had been everything. Olivia talked to him for a few minutes, asking about his work. Ethan responded politely, but as always, he avoided talking too much about his own life. He did not mention bills piling up, his sister studying every night, or the long hours he worked to keep them afloat. But Olivia noticed. She had built a company dealing with negotiations, business strategies, and reading people. She saw the caution in his posture and the exhaustion in his eyes. She saw a man carrying more weight than he would ever admit. Then Olivia did something Ethan never expected. She invited him and Sarah to have dinner at her home the following night. Ethan was stunned. Dinner with a wealthy stranger who owed him nothing? He hesitated, thinking about the cost of transportation, the old suit he did not have, the discomfort of standing in a world too far from his own. But Sarah, who overheard Emily's excited invitation, begged him. She had always dreamed of seeing how people on the other side lived, not out of envy, but curiosity. Ethan finally nodded, still unsure, but wanting to give his sister something more than hard work and delayed dreams. The following evening, Ethan stood looking at himself in the cracked mirror of their small bathroom. He wore the only dress shirt he owned, carefully ironed by Sarah. She walked in, smiling and telling him he looked fine. He told her he did not want to embarrass her. She told him he never could. They took a cab together, something they rarely did, and as they approached the massive mansion, their eyes widened. The house was majestic, glowing warmly against the evening sky, the kind of house most people only saw in movies. Ethan swallowed hard and whispered to Sarah not to touch anything that looked expensive. She nudged him playfully, reminding him that they were guests, not intruders. Olivia greeted them at the door wearing an elegant dress, her expression warm and genuine. Emily rushed forward and hugged Sarah, who was delighted by her enthusiasm. Olivia led them inside, not into a formal dining room, but into a cozy kitchen space with a round table, soft lighting, and the aroma of roasted vegetables and warm bread. Olivia wanted them to feel comfortable, not intimidated. Dinner was pleasant, filled with Emily's chatter and Sarah's laughter, while Ethan answered questions politely but with modesty. When Olivia asked if he was raising his sister alone, he answered yes. He did not complain. He simply said she deserved a good life and he had to make sure she got the chance. As the evening continued, Olivia's respect for Ethan grew. He had lost much, but he had never lost his kindness. She knew then that this dinner was not the end. It was the beginning of something far bigger. And Ethan, though grateful, had no idea the night was about to change everything. When dinner ended, Olivia cleared her throat and looked at Ethan with a seriousness that made the room grow quiet. She told him she had something to say, something important, and Ethan immediately shifted in his chair, already uncomfortable with the tension. He tried to explain again that she did not owe him anything, that helping her daughter had been nothing more than a simple act of kindness. But Olivia shook her head gently, her voice steady, as she told him that what he did was far bigger than a forgotten dollar. It was the type of action that showed a person's true heart, and in her world, people like that were incredibly rare. She stood, walked to a side table, and returned with a sealed envelope. Sarah watched with wide eyes, and Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he accepted it, not yet understanding. Olivia explained that inside was a scholarship fund in Sarah's name, enough to cover her education and living expenses so she could go to nursing school without worry. Ethan's chair seemed suddenly unsteady beneath him. His instincts screamed that this was too much, that accepting help felt like admitting failure. But Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes, hope sparkling in a way he had not seen in years. Ethan opened the envelope and read the confirmation. His throat tightened. Words would not come. Olivia was not finished. She told him she also owned a chain of retail stores across the state and wanted to offer him a managerial position. It came with a real salary, benefits, stability, and room to grow. Ethan's head dropped. No one had ever offered him something like that. He had spent years pushing forward because he had to, never imagining that someone might finally offer him a way out of survival mode. He stammered, asking why she would do this for him. Olivia answered simply, because he changed her daughter's world when he had nothing to gain, and people like that deserve doors opening in return. For a moment, the room was filled with silence. Then Sarah stood and hugged him tightly, telling him that this meant she could become the nurse she dreamed of being. Emily clapped excitedly, calling Ethan a real-life hero. Olivia placed a hand on his shoulder and said he had already thanked her, back when he knelt in front of a frightened little girl in a blue raincoat. Finally, Ethan allowed himself to cry, not in embarrassment or shame, but in relief. The world had finally shifted in his favor after so long standing still. But with change often comes doubt, and the following days brought an emotional storm Ethan had not expected. Accepting kindness was harder for him than offering it. He had spent so many years surviving that stepping into something new felt terrifying. He walked into his new workplace for the first time wearing a new suit that Olivia had quietly arranged to be delivered. Employees greeted him with respect, congratulating him on his new role. Yet, inside, Ethan felt like an imposter. He worried someone would discover he was just a former clerk from a small supermarket who climbed stairs every night to an apartment with leaking plumbing and outdated furniture. What if he failed? What if he let Sarah down? Sarah noticed his uneasiness. She came home from her first day at nursing school overwhelmed but excited, telling him about new friends, new teachers, and classes that felt right for her future. She hugged him and reminded him that Olivia believed in him, but more importantly, she believed in him long before that. She told him that after everything they had survived, he deserved this opportunity. He wanted to believe her. He was trying. Meanwhile, Olivia followed his progress quietly. She did not push or interfere. She had given him the chance, and now she wanted him to grow on his own. Emily asked about Ethan constantly, drawing pictures of him as a superhero holding a broom like a sword, saving people in the supermarket. Olivia laughed, but also felt deeply moved. That simple act of kindness had changed more than one life. But life, even when improving, can present new challenges that test a person's spirit. One evening, a week after starting his new position, Ethan returned home exhausted to find an envelope taped to his apartment door. It was from the building manager, rent increase due to new maintenance fees. Ethan stood in the hallway, staring at the paper, the weight of old fears gripping his chest. He was earning more now, but he still had debts, school expenses to support for Sarah, and responsibilities he had carried alone for years. For a moment, the hallway felt too small, the future too heavy, and the change too sudden. It was the old insecurity creeping back in, whispering that he was still not good enough, that life always took back what it gave. He sat at the kitchen table long after Sarah had gone to bed, staring at the rent notice and fighting off the familiar feeling of sinking. He felt torn between the past and the future. Accepting help had changed his world, but old survival instincts told him not to trust it fully. The fear was not of failure, but of letting down the sister who believed in him more than anyone. The night stretched long, and Ethan's doubts grew. The new job, the new expectations, the new life unfolding in front of him suddenly felt fragile, as though everything could still fall apart with one wrong step. This was the lowest moment since the night he received Olivia's offer. For the first time since everything changed, Ethan wondered if he was truly ready to step into the life that had been handed to him. He sat in silence, unaware that the next day would bring a turning point he never saw coming.
The following morning, Ethan arrived at work earlier than usual. He had barely slept, and exhaustion sat heavy on his shoulders. He slipped quietly into the small office now assigned to him, turning on the computer and reviewing paperwork without really seeing what was written. The notice from the landlord still weighed heavily in his pocket, like a silent reminder that stability was never guaranteed. He had worked his entire life expecting struggle, and even in moments of blessing, a part of him feared the ground would crumble again. But that morning was not like every other. Shortly after opening, Olivia arrived unexpectedly. She never interfered in his work, so when she knocked on his door and stepped inside, Ethan stood instantly, straightening the papers in front of him. She noticed the strain in his eyes and the weight in his posture that had not been there during their first dinner. Instead of questioning, she simply sat across from him and spoke softly, asking if everything was all right. Ethan tried to brush it off, saying he was just getting used to new responsibilities, but Olivia had spent too many years reading people not to recognize a breaking point. She waited quietly, giving him space, and slowly his defenses cracked. Ethan admitted that he was afraid of not being good enough, afraid of being someone who received more than he earned, afraid that one day everything he was being given would vanish and he would return to the life he fought so long to climb out of. He confessed that sometimes he looked around and still felt like the boy sweeping floors, pretending to belong in rooms built for others. Olivia listened without interruption, letting him release the fears he had carrying alone for far too long. When he finished, she leaned forward and spoke with quiet firmness. She told him that every person who rises from hardship feels that way at some point, and the world had taught him to expect struggle because struggle had been all he knew. But limitations were not the truth, only the past. She reminded him that she did not offer him the job out of pity, but recognition. He had shown qualities that could not be bought: empathy, responsibility, determination, humility. Many people with perfect resumes lacked half of what he carried naturally. No promotion or office could give him a value he did not already possess. She ended by saying that accepting opportunity was not weakness, it was courage. Those words settled into Ethan slowly, the way cold hands thaw when brought near the fire. He swallowed hard, wiped his eyes, and nodded. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future not built solely on survival, but on growth. Olivia smiled, stood, and left him with the same dignity she had given from the start. Over the following months, Ethan changed, quietly, gradually, but profoundly. He became more confident, delegating tasks with calm precision and guiding younger employees with the same patience he once reserved for sweeping the supermarket aisles. Customers liked him, staff respected him, the numbers in the store improved, not because he demanded more, but because people were willing to give more under someone who treated them with fairness and kindness. Word spread through the company, and Olivia watched his growth with quiet pride. At home, life also transformed. Sarah thrived in nursing school. She studied late into the night, but now at a proper desk instead of the cramped kitchen table. She spoke passionately about her classes, about patient care, compassion, and science, and her eyes lit up in a way that reminded Ethan of what potential looks like when it finally has room to breathe. On weekends, the two of them visited Olivia and Emily for dinner. The girls grew inseparable, and Ethan and Olivia developed a friendship built on mutual respect, neither forgetting where their connection began. One small moment in a supermarket aisle. Then one day, months later, Ethan stood on the sidewalk outside the store he now managed. The evening sky glowed soft orange and city traffic hummed in the distance. He looked up at the building and realized something important. He no longer feared returning to the life he had lived before, not because the world had changed, but because he had. The strength he carried had been there all along. Life had simply given him a chance to use it. He thought of that day when a frightened little girl counted coins at a counter while strangers sighed and judged. He thought of how easy it would have been to walk past and stay invisible, how one quiet decision had opened doors he never dared to knock on. An act so small it could have been forgotten, but instead it changed everything. When he returned home that night, Sarah was waiting on the couch, nursing textbooks spread across her lap. She told him about her day, and he listened with the calm happiness of someone who finally felt secure in the path ahead. Then, before going to bed, he stepped outside to look at the stars above the city skyline. He whispered something almost like a prayer, gratitude for the chance to rise, for Sarah's future, and for the reminder that the world still had space for kindness. This story reminds us that one simple gesture can change a life in ways we may never expect. Many people walk through the world believing they are unnoticed, but kindness is never wasted. It lingers, it grows, and sometimes it returns when we need it most. If you were touched by this story, share what small act of kindness changed the life of you or someone you know. And if you enjoy stories like this, follow the channel to keep this journey going. There are many more ahead.